Well, nothing has happened this week. I don't know what we're gonna talk about because it's been hasn't been a historical week in the history of the United States. We'll see on the other side. Well, welcome to another episode of South Star Classroom. We are without two of our co-hosts today. It's been a busy week for us, but I don't know if it's been a busy week for the country. Since the last time we saw each other, David, we had a different presidential nominee. I don't think there was an assassination attempt on a former president's life. A lot of things have happened in the last few weeks since vacation and since we've seen you, brother. So how are you? And then I'm going to let you just lead our conversation today. This is wild.
Yeah, I've been good. It's good to be back. We took a little bit of a break there for summer, and so just kind of like slowing down on all fronts, and now we are starting to pick things back up. But yeah, things have been good. We're kind of right in the middle of summer. I don't think we go back until mid-August, so we still have a little bit of time. It's been nice and warm. Been outside a lot. And yeah, but like you said, man, not much has happened in the world or in the country. It's been very calm and quiet.
Man. Well, let's just jump right in. I don't think we talked about the assassination attempt. I don't think we've talked about, the new ticket. So wherever you want to
Yeah.
go, man, you've been going. So you are the host of honor today, brother. I'm down to just have a conversation with my friend. Class
All
will be
right.
in session. Where would you like to start off? What's on your mind?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like they are all connected, but and I'm going to approach this from the perspective of a parent that's trying to explain this stuff to his 14-year-old son, as an educator who is thinking about teachers as they head back, to school in the fall and how they engage in these conversations with young people, and then just as a social science nerd, right? So multiple different angles. I think what I would, maybe we just take them one at a time and see where we go. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which obviously everybody saw, and was obviously unsuccessful. It's pretty crazy just to see how, and even just talking about the assassination, all of the fallout with the Secret Service and the I think the director of the I'm
No,
not
they
even
ate
up to
her
date with
up.
this
They ate her
100%.
up. I mean, to be
Gone,
fair,
right?
she
She's already
she did not
resigned.
do well in her
Yeah.
congressional hearing. So
And it's so hard to like tell like what's real and what's not real. Um, it does sound like this person got access to a building which they shouldn't have had access to, that people saw him up there, that there was a delay in a response, and all of these things. So I don't know when they're going to reveal the official timeline. I mean, I saw something just like yesterday where a senator had gone there and was like in a building where the Secret Service had people literally looking down on the roof where the shooter was. And I was like, I have questions, right? So I think that whole thing was definitely clearly mishandled, and I'm glad former President Trump was not seriously injured. But I think I don't know what it is. I was alive when and there's this whole thing about the shooter. The shooter was, there are probably people that wanted to like create some kind of a narrative out of it, but it sounded like he was just a distraught young person, right?
yeah.
With access to firearms. I don't know if there was a political thing happening there. So when I was alive when and I remember the Reagan assassination attempt. And Charles, I don't know what it is, but that one felt different than this one has. Maybe it's just the speed of our news cycles now, right? It's like so much like stuff just comes in and out. And back in the day, you can only get news in the newspaper or at the 5 o'clock or the 11 o'clock news. It wasn't just it all in your face. And so there's definitely like this, like nobody's talking about it anymore. And whether you like Trump or not, like his life was almost taken, right? And all of a sudden it's like we moved on with the two other topics that we'll talk about. We're going to move on too. But it feels
you're going to do it as well. So,
Yeah, I don't know what I've been trying to think about it, but like when Reagan was almost assassinated by John Hinckley Jr., it felt like.
Were you around when Gerald Ford? I mean, I was,
but I was very young.
Gotcha.
So I don't remember that. I remember Reagan. And Reagan was obviously Republican. I come from a long tradition of Democratic households. But for us, it wasn't political. It was just like, wow, this person almost got shot and killed. And it felt different. It felt like, the country was in a different place. We were way more united than we are now. And I think everybody kind of put down their quote unquote guns or their arms, and people came together to be Americans. And I just, that has not happened in this case. And I don't know why. We can talk about it, but I wanted to go back and look at, this is obviously not the first time. We know in 1865, Lincoln was the first official assassination, right? By John Wilkes Booth at the Ford's Theater in DC. That's a historical moment. In 1881, James Garfield was shot by Charles Guiteau. Garfield succumbed to his injuries, not at that time, but a couple of months later. I don't know if people remember that. It was in 1881. McKinley in 1901 was shot by an anarchist. I can't even pronounce his name, Leon Zildjian, in 1901, and he died 7 days later. So he was shot and he was killed as a result of the shot. Franklin Roosevelt, attempted assassination attempt in Miami, Florida. He was unharmed, but Chicago mayor at the time, Anton Cermak, was fatally wounded in that attempted assassination. 1950, Harry Truman, Puerto Rican nationalist Oscar Gallardo and Griselio Torresola attempted to assassinate Truman at the Blair House. One of the people was killed and the other one was wounded and captured. Obviously, Harry Truman was not injured. John F. Kennedy, we all know about that in 1963.
Jesus.
They tried to get Gerald Ford 2 times, right? You're bringing that up.
I didn't know it was twice.
One time, it was twice, man. One time in Sacramento and another time in San Francisco.
It's so crazy because Gerald Ford is the president that didn't fire a single shot or something like that. I think that's his claim to fame as far as the president thing goes. Still kicking, he's still alive. So
that's crazy, man. They tried to get him twice. And then Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama during his presidency faced several credible threats and assassination attempts, intercepted plans, right? People were apprehended with intent to harm him. So people were trying to get close to Obama, right? But nothing ever transpired. That's what we know. So, this is not a new phenomenon for the country, but something about it just feels different to me.
Yeah, I don't know why I said Gerald Ford still alive. He died in 2006, but
I don't know. He survived. He might,
right? Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of somebody else, but man, I know he was kicking for a minute though. He lasted a long time, bro. Listen, man, it is regardless of where you land on stuff, man. I'm obviously not a Trump fan. I don't agree with that type of violence. I don't agree with I just don't. I don't think it's good for us. I don't think it's good for the country. And I think the way that the reactions have been, I think have been a little bit abhorrent. I just don't wish death on people, man. It's just not really any coming back from that. But I get it. I understand. Like I'm not gonna, it is what it is. I still wouldn't vote for the guy. That don't mean that I don't, but it's just interesting, man. I just think we're in a very unserious time. We have an unserious demeanor for a very serious time, and everything is like a joke. And it's just like that's like we have geopolitical beef. Like we have geopolitical, like we have been at the top or leaders for a long time, and there are a lot of nations that are waiting for their moments of vulnerability to and they're not gonna, if that happens, they're not gonna pick out who was Republican and who was Democrat, who was conservative and who was liberal. Them bombs is, them gunshots, those bombs, those things would be coming for us as a whole. And it's just I don't know, man. And then I also think dude is a buffoon. I also think that like there were some moments where he could have tried to bring folks together, and I don't think he did that. I think that his rhetoric has helped feed in an environment where something like this happens. There's too many questions. There's too many questions around why was Secret Service just so terrible that day. Like I've just never like even watching the videos after, and they do these videos where you can see individual people, and you like, wait, is this sister having a problem holstering her gun back? Like what is happening? Like, for people that don't, I don't know if there's no safety on Secret Service guns. Like those guns got to be hot, ready to go. Wow. So when I'm seeing somebody have an issue reholstering like their weapon, like I am a gun owner. I have guns. Mm-hmm. I've never had to use them. I go to the range. Like I'm legally a gun, registered. And there are just certain things you have to do even when you're getting your license or like when you're getting trained. And I'm watching this lady who's part of one of the most elite security forces in the world struggle to reholster. It feeds into these conspiracy theories that I don't think do any of us any good. So I'm just kind of whining about it right now, man. I'm ready to move on, but that's just I guess I'm still processing. But you said you had to explain it to a child, so how did you process that? Like, where did that leave you, and what was that conversation like with the young one?
Yeah, good question. And I don't want to like.
I'm gonna redo my call too, so keep going.
Yeah, no problem. There was a father was actually hit and killed by bullets during the Trump assassination, who was trying to protect his family. And so I don't want to gloss over that. It's obviously, a life lost. So want to call that out. But, talking to young people about it, I think the way that I approach that and other things is is two things: is be factual about it, like what actually happened. Try not to bring forward like too much information, but being as factual as we can about these incidents. Also, making sure that that young people know that this is not the first time it's happened. Probably not going to be the last. Presidents are obviously, high visibility kind of targets for a number of different reasons, whether it's like somebody's politics or, somebody trying to prove a point. So, as little information, but as factual as you can, and then just to field questions. And it's like, I don't have the answers. You don't have half of the answers. But trying to help young people sort the conspiracy stuff from like as much fact-based things that you can bring forward, because the conspiracy engine is revving incredibly high right now. It's wild, man. And so, yeah, that's my general like take on that. Again, I'm glad he wasn't seriously injured. Based on what little I've seen, and I think I've seen enough, I agree with you that Social Security, whatever, local police, the county, whoever was in charge of security at that facility or whatever kind of, it looked like a industrial park or something, failed. Because nobody should be able to get that close to a sitting or a former president with a with a rifle like that to be able to carry out that kind of violence. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, man. I listen. I mean, I know we're about to move on. I just, it's been a wild last few weeks, and then you had the Republican convention. We got the Democratic one that's coming up, and it's going to be very interesting just to kind of see. Yeah. But if you had anything else, but go ahead.
Well, no, you mentioned it. So I think Trump gave a speech just shortly after his assassination attempt, right, at the convention, and it was a great opportunity to kind of diffuse the energy, and have people kind of stand down and refocus. And I think his people had a whole speech written for him around that. And what does he do?
Went off. Spoke for an hour and a half.
He threw it out, and he went off the dome and just like, came out of that thing way more divisive, and however many fact checkers that were watching that, they were just like, it was lie after lie after lie, right? So and I'm also surprised that people, and this is the sad part, that people actually expected him to change his tone, right? I'm like, well, that's your fault for expecting this guy to.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people.
I'm not one of those people either. I'm like, of course he's not going to, So yeah, that was obviously a missed opportunity, not for him, but for the country. But yeah, that happened, and then and so when I think about, there's obviously we'll get into like implications for education, talk about education policy. But I think with the assassination attempt, again, as people are coming back to school, parents talking to their kids, again, just collect as much factual information you can, share it with them, listen to them, answer their questions. You don't have to have all the answers, but also helping them to understand that this kind of violence, while I think, very few people condone it, is part of the history of our country and other countries too, right? I mean, look at political violence in Mexico. It's wild.
Oh yeah. Listen, I remember when I was a younger adult in Ciudad Juarez, because I'm for people that don't know, I'm a Bay Area kid, and when you broke and you want to go on spring break in the Bay Area, you drive to San Diego with your friends, you park at the border, and this is before you need a passport. You could just use your California ID and walk across. And during the midst, right after I graduated, maybe like early mid-20s, maybe, like the cartels shit got wild, and that's when they changed laws. And and there were these Mexican kids who were very Americanized, like blogging and kind of talking about stuff. And to be fair to the cartel, which is the craziest line, they warned these kids, stop talking about this, and they didn't. And those young people ended up hanging off of a bridge with their heads cut off, man. The cartels were taking out judges. I mean, they took out a sheriff, and then the sheriff's daughter took over, and then they took out, there's political violence all over. I went to Paris right during Brexit was starting to happen. A cathedral had been taken over by a terrorist. I was in a cathedral. If you've been to Europe before, it's like the cathedrals are also active churches, but they're also museums. So you can walk around while sermons are happening in French. Where right here's John the Baptist, and you can walk and look at it, and there's a sermon happening. But I remember these guys, like the military police or whoever it was, just laid everybody down with guns, because they thought there was a terrorist threat. So I mean, we've been somewhat fortunate in this country to not have to constantly live under that level of duress that I've seen in other places. I go to the Bahamas every year. They don't carry pea shooters. They carry, they carry very, very big powerful rifles. Yeah, it's different.
Yep.
So, listen, man, I think we've been blessed, but we gotta take stuff seriously, man. This parasocial living and relationship that we have with the internet and everything being a joke, that could be really problematic, man. But moving on,
So we're gonna move on now too.
Moving on.
so then the next thing that happens, I think, shortly after the assassination attempt, and I think or Trump accepting the nomination of his party, which we could do a whole show on the Republican convention. That was quite fascinating. Who was invited, who wasn't, the tone of it. I mean, some of it's just comical, but Biden gets COVID, right? And you're like, everybody's worried that.
Oh shit, you skip parts. You skip stuff. You skip.
Well, yeah, I mean, but did he get COVID before he announced, or did he get COVID?
It was before. So basically, man, you gotta go back. You have to go back even to the debate. The debate happens.
Yeah.
People are not impressed. Biden, and so the calls start, right? Like, and again, and I don't like these narratives that the right wing. I am a Democrat. I am a card-carrying Democrat. I give donations to Democrats. Like, I give money. I feel like I can critique my party. He did not. It wasn't just because of old age. It was because he was having cognitive decline, man. Like, I watching this man. So there are calls for him to step down. There's an internal fight that is not very well kept secret. If you watched last week's show, I think we had a really good conversation, Omar and I, about it. Anybody that missed it. And then the assassination attempt happens. Trump gets a whole bunch of points, whole bunch of energy. And then after he says I'm 1,000% staying in the race, he gets COVID. And then finally, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, whoever the brass is behind the scenes, gets him to step aside. And for a while, it was like, who's going to be the person? But there's legalities there that I wasn't fully aware of. But like, basically, she's the only one that can take the money that they raised legally. And then, Kamala Harris gets named. And this is where we are now. And so, and the infighting, man, like I'm a black man, David, maybe you didn't notice, just to remind people.
Yes, sir.
It is very sad and disheartening to me that the black male versus black female narrative is starting to pick up. It really breaks my heart. In my real life, black men and black women do not have beef like this. It's just not a thing. But it's already starting where, okay, black women are going to save democracy. Black men are going to break and go vote here, when it looks like there's a lot of people in the black community that's breaking, either not necessarily towards Trump, but not going to vote. It just makes me sad. I'm still a Democrat. Yeah. I donated to Kamala Harris's campaign as soon as she got announced. Now, is she my favorite person? Is she somebody that I like personally? That it's irrelevant. I don't like Trump. I don't like any of these. It's not about liking them. I am the policies that I know that I'm voting for, that I'm invested in. I'm in the middle with MOHELA right now. MOHELA is now where my student loans sit. So when the government talked about canceling loans, you take all your loans and then you have to reconsolidate them underneath the United States government, which is managed by MOHELA. On top of doing that, I got a bump. So there's a fee for doing that, but I was doing that with the hopes of getting it like forgiven. It is well into six figures. I mean, well into six figures. And I need these cats to win because, I know the Supreme Court's fighting it, but I know if Trump wins, not only am I stuck paying those loans, I'm stuck paying the fees on top of that of those loans. Yeah. So, and then just other things in this country. So I'm very clear on where I'm at. And at the same time, my party does not look strong. I can give a honest critique and say, look, if you keep telling me this is the most important election ever, all this is at stake, the fate of democracy, all that, why would you run Biden in the first place? The plan was he was supposed to be a bridge president. You were supposed to be setting up Kamala Harris or finding a new ticket. So, we just kind of got caught with our hand in the cookie jar, not really ready for what's happening. I think that we can still win. I'm hopeful, but again, I'm not surprised either way, however this election goes, and I'm just prepared. Yeah. I'm prepared for any outcome, or to the best of my knowledge, I'm prepared for any outcome.
I think and this is before she officially was tagged with the candidacy. There was pretty good polling data out there to show that in several very important swing states, she was polling better against Trump than Biden was polling, right? So I think with Biden stepping down, which I agree, I was incredibly, and I think it's good to have a discussion. There are like Democrats that are are upset that Biden is stepping down. They don't like to see the kind of internal infighting. I think it's a good thing. It's put a lot of energy back into the race. I think she raised something like $85 million in one day, the 24 hours following. That's crazy, man. So, I think I'm excited about it, and it'll be interesting to see what they do around the VP selection. I think there's a lot of interesting combinations. It's complicated, obviously, as you said, but there is some, and you and I have worked on political campaigns before,
right? Worked on them together.
moving the money from one campaign to the other is possible, but it's a process to transfer the funds, and they can take some time. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. We don't have to get into the weeds, but it's not, you can't just change the campaign
right
from the campaign from the PAC money from Biden for president to Harris for president. You have to go through a process to actually access those dollars, because those dollars were brought in under the premise that Biden was going to be the candidate, right? So I think there's a little ambiguity there. But I mean, obviously they'll sort it out. And she's already raised a ton of money on her own.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, we have a new presidential candidate, and the timing is very interesting. I mean, when is the Democratic? So I think that's interesting too.
For a few weeks and we're
it's crazy.
Chicago. I mean, Milwaukee's was right there too, which is not very far. It's gonna be very interesting, man. And right now it's neck and neck. It's a race of margins, is what we would call it, when the polling is within the margin of error, which it happens a lot more than people think. But what we're saying, give or take a few points. Currently, she leads 44% to 42%. They both have pretty high disapproval ratings. I think people are energized at this moment. I think who she chooses as her running mate is going to be interesting.
Oh my God, and really important too.
Yeah, man. So, it's going to be interesting, man. It's definitely going to be interesting. But I was one of those people that said Biden needed to step down. I know that there's a lot of people within my party that don't agree with that sentiment, that don't like that. But again, I don't think, even if Kamala Harris loses this election, I do not think Biden was going to win. I don't. I saw people very actively, and again, there are surrogates that have a narrative. I'm just telling you what I saw in my black ass community and in my brown ass community. People that I know are diehard Democrats were not energized, and some of them did say that they were looking at Trump, but many of them were just like, I don't know if I'm going. I just don't know if I'm gonna go vote. I don't like any of these guys.
People were not happy with either choice, and now we have a new this new combination at play, and we don't know who the VP is. So they have to balance this thing. This is another interesting, a lot of this breaks down to like polling, right? Polling data, talking to voters, but you can't. So Kamala Harris is she's from California. She's not an Oakland native. She never actually lived in Oakland. She was born
Berkeley, right? She was born at the hospital. She was born at
she was born at a hospital with an Oakland address, which
was
is
it Alta Bates?
Yeah, it's like 10 feet away from Berkeley. So she was born in an Oakland hospital, but she's not the Oakland mayor, Sheng Tao, is like, oh, Oakland native Kamala Harris. And like, she's not an Oakland native. She grew up in Berkeley till she was like 12 or 14. And so I don't understand that infatuation with people trying to, say like, oh, Oakland raised, Oakland, whatever. And she's done it to herself, but, regardless, Bay Area. And obviously tagged with, the California hashtag. People are going to now be looking at her record from the time that she entered politics all the way through to when she, left California for this position with Biden. And I mean, her California record is not super rosy, just in terms of like crime and criminal prosecution. And so they're definitely going to be coming after her for a lot of her track record, which is normal. But what I was trying to explain to my son, and I think it's a calculus, right? You have a woman of color from California that has to be balanced out on the other side, right? You're going to have to pick somebody from the Bible Belt or the East Coast, right? And somebody who's maybe not so progressive.
If John Edwards wasn't disgraced, like if John Edwards wasn't disgraced, this would be John Edwards, as the. Do you remember John Edwards? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So you have to. So part of their calculus is to figure out how to balance that ticket, right? Because if it's
you can't do Gavin, you can't do that.
No way. I mean, even I think before people were thinking about like a Newsom Harris or Harris Newsom ticket. And I'm like, we're gonna lose. We'll lose quickly.
Right.
Believe me. So they're thinking about who they're going to select. I think also the just in terms of the logistics, it's going into a presidential political party's campaign so late in the game with this kind of uncertainty is also interesting, right? It feels like everything has been so scripted up to this point. And so, I mean, part of it feels actually quite democratic in like, we don't really know what the ticket's going to be. We don't even know if she's going to get the nomination, right?
I think she got it, but yeah, I mean, I think they have
but
but yes,
yeah,
we technically do not know yet. Yes,
exactly. And so, I think all that's interesting, and we'll see what happens there. But again, I'm hopeful. It's put new energy into it, and now whether you like it or not, I think I forget who the African American reporter was from CNN was interviewing. He wasn't interviewing Trump, but he was interviewing somebody about Trump, and all of a sudden Trump is now the target for being the old man in the race.
Yeah.
He's almost 8. He's almost 80, right? He's like 79 or 78.
Yeah, and again, and I remember that, and this again, this is where people like, well, you're shaming him because of his age. It wasn't the age. It was not the number, right? Like I think Nancy Pelosi is still pretty sharp. It was the presentation. Yeah. It was very clearly cognitive like decline. It was very clearly, if that was Papa Castillo, right? If that was Mr. Your father, and he's up speaking, and you see these gaffes, it's kind of like, all right, y'all. Hey, Charles, Omar, Jube, I gotta take my father home. Like I need to.
Bro, you know what I'm saying? I was hanging with my dad. I was hanging with my dad yesterday. My dad's 8. My dad is Biden's age. I was like, how old are you, Dad? Like 83. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, you are very. You have your memory's solid. My dad doesn't have those kind of like, he doesn't get lost and stuff, but I'm like, you have grandkids, you got kids, you got great grandkids. Like this is the time of your life when you were spending your time with your family.
Right.
I mean, even for somebody like Biden, dude, I mean, like, bro, I don't know how long you're going to be here for.
Dog. Like you've had a life of service.
Yeah. And it sends an interesting message to people that have been kind of pushing this message around, like call it like work-life balance. And like, why are we working ourselves into our 60s, right? Like, why can't we figure out how to retire earlier so we can actually enjoy, decades of our lives when, we still have our faculties together, right?
Right.
And that's definitely like a democratic, left-leaning, progressive message. And he's like screwing up the whole script for them, but not anymore.
Well, I mean, look, man, I look at it like this, right? And I'll probably be cursed with that too, right? Like, I don't want to leave the game. I mean, hell, when we've had a few episodes where it's like, hey, let's just and I'm like, no, I gotta, I'm gonna run to the hotel and do this episode. I mean, I like working, and maybe that's some deep-seated stuff. Like, again, I grew up homeless, so, work means something to me besides just a check. I like doing the things I'm supposed to do, but I'm very tired right now. So I get it, man. Like, listen, look, however I may feel about Biden or some of his older policies and things like that, I think that I watched him and I feel like the people that care about him should have been the ones that's like, look, we need another plan, because my husband, my father, my granddaddy, like, I feel like somebody that's that type of close to him should be seeing that and it's like, listen, man, look, I'm not gonna let my father go on stage and have an accident in front of people. Like, I'm just not gonna, even with the relationship I got with my dad, right? We ain't always the best of friends, but I'm just not gonna do that. But I think it comes down to power. And and I think we have to start having more conversations about power. And even as this is the South Star Classroom, I think the lesson that I want people to be focusing on is a few things. One is just basic civics education. Like, this is a time to re-educate the country in civics, what's legal, what is not legal, and what is actually democracy and what is not democracy. It's like you said, technically we have to go to the convention. Technically you have to have the delegates, and technically we have to call your name and say the delegates have chosen you. In the letter of the law, the letter of this democratic tradition, somebody could challenge. I mean, it could, who knows, right? Like, delegates could switch.
Sure.
It's very unlikely, but I don't think a lot of people are knowing this stuff. And there's some things I had to even freshen up on, and I'm a nerd about this stuff. So I think that's one. I think two is, what is our own cognitive level as we start to watch this stuff, right? Like, are we going to be the emotional voters, or are we going to be the voters that's like informed? And which candidate is kind of going to play more to your needs? Like, where are you going to get your needs met? And I know where my needs get met at. But I'm also not surprised. And I'm not surprised, and I don't threaten people when people are not voting the way that I do, man. Like, is it democracy, or is it like, vote who I want you to vote for? Like, if I'm organizing 3 buses to go take people to vote, and then you find out that 2.5 of those buses is voting for the other person, like, it's like, well, do you not continue to spend that money and send them, or do you let the democratic process play out, the one that you keep telling me I have to save? And I think we're going to be confronted with a lot of like just value questions, right? And so
I think a lot of I have spoken with I have different connections to like different communities, some online, some not, and I've talked to a lot of people about Trump, people that are voting for Trump, even like hardcore MAGA people. And overall, like what I learn is that, the most diehard Trump supporters, at least that I know, that I've come across, aren't really about Trump for his policy issues, but rather like who he is as a person. And so I think it's that like emotional piece that you talk about. It's not about his like campaign platform, right? They're not, it's like they'll throw out stuff like Biden has wrecked the economy. Well, inflation is kind of not good right now, but if you look at the economy as a whole, it's not that bad, because you have to look at other factors other than inflation. But I do think this pick of the VP is going to be interesting. So I'm just looking at, I don't know how accurate this is, but it's from CNN. A couple of names that have surfaced.
Yes, what are the names?
So Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, right? Is one. Roy Cooper from North Carolina, right? Governor Roy Cooper. Okay. So we're talking about like a California candidate and a Pennsylvania person, California and North Carolina, right? This is like making the spread. Interesting one is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly.
Okay.
Right. Former astronaut. Can't mess with that. Dude's been into outer space. Andy Bashar, Kentucky governor. Governor, right? You're talking about spreading a wide net, casting a wide net. J.B. Pritzker, Illinois governor.
Yeah, that would be
so
bad.
You got two connections right there, man. You got the Kentucky connection and the Illinois connection.
I need JB to get a handle on what's going on in our state, but I hear you. I got
you. Yeah. Well, let's get into that next.
Because Whitmore,
Pete
I
Buttig-
think
Pete-
that I don't think
Pete
they would run
Buttigieg,
Whitmore. Yeah, I think Pete might be the person,
Whitmer.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
and Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is on that list.
he shouldn't be. But
I know he shouldn't be, but he's on there. They wrote him in. But yeah,
and
I
nothing
think
against Gavin, it just won't work. It just can't work. The same reason I don't think Gretchen could work. I think you already like a black, an Asian woman, and then you want another woman. Like, and here's the thing. I think Gretchen.
I mean, that's being real.
That's been very real. Like, let's have we have to get to a point we can have an honest conversation. Like, as you are a brown man, I'm a black man. Like, come on, man. Like, I know what's gonna happen with that. Like, I know what people are gonna say publicly, and I know what they're gonna end up doing privately. And again, I think Whitmore is actually pretty good. Like, she's she's kind of one of those. She's a purple state winner. Like, she is. It's a different type of vibe to be the leader of those type of places. That's why Pennsylvania is in place like that. That's why and Ohio would have been in play if it Vegas. Like, if you can win these purple places or places that were red and you turn them blue, those are the people that they're trying to pull so they can speak to the middle of the country. And you got to talk to the middle of the country, man.
You have to. You got to talk to the.
It's coming down to 3 states. It's going to come down to 3 states. So, it becomes a math game.
I saw in another piece. I saw Beto O'Rourke. So this is just a short list, but we'll see how that shakes out. I'm sure the selection process for that is. I mean, just imagine how booked solid Kamala Harris's appointment calendar is right now.
Right.
Yeah. She's already sending her husband out on events, on fundraising things. She's like, she can't be here, but here's her husband.
I mean, they're gonna have to do that. They're gonna have to ask Barack to get out there, and Michelle,
everybody's gonna get out.
Michelle is still the highest polling Democrat in the world right now. So you're gonna try to get Michelle, who probably doesn't want to do it. You're gonna have to. I mean, it's going to be all, guns blazing. I think Shapiro might be in the lead of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Annie Bashir is the person that they ended up going with. I mean, you need somebody next to her that can speak to the middle of the country. And I hate to say this, but it's also very likable. Like, let's not like she was not likable. And she struggled in that primary. Like, she got out pretty early. So I think, and I think it's a Democrat's fault for not having her ready to go. Like, when it's your first term, you are always running. It's all running. You don't stop campaigning. Like, always be campaigning, right? There's ABC for always be closing, but it's also ABC for always be campaigning. I think that I don't think there's with the polls are saying what they're saying, and they're going to fluctuate. They're going to go where they go. I think it would serve presidential nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris well to really tap into her authenticity, to talk straight to people, to not, come off as like, talking or finger wagging at people, and like talk to people. I hope she learns from some of the mistakes that Democrats in the past that have lost. I think when Hillary Clinton lost and there were just places she just did not go campaign. I think you have to learn from that. And we'll see, man. We'll see how it goes, but they got my money. I've made my donations. So
there you go. I think the next thing is, now we have this election coming up, which is going to happen. We'll have, 2 different parties and 4 different candidates to choose from. But the question now is like, and we'll talk about one area. We've heard about it's pretty clear based on what JD Vance has said and Trump has said, sometimes publicly, but mainly privately, that if reelected, they're going to go for like a national ban on abortion. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's an issue that we know about. The other issues that, we don't know so much about, but what we talk about on the show is the education policy platform.
Yeah.
And I think there it's also very, very stark, very like if Trump gets in, it's going to be a return to, let's figure out how we can dismantle the federal Department of Education.
I did a whole show on it, brother.
Maybe
It
we
was all
did.
well researched. I got a script and everything. It was fun.
And now with this like new kind of push on like school choice, unregulated school choice, what I like to call scorched earth school choice, where people that know how to access school choice will get it, and those that historically have not will not. So you're just going to exacerbate the actual issue. That's kind of the path that I see the Trump plan going down, just a doubling down on what we're seeing in particular states right now, with literally, like they say, letting the money follow the child with very little strings attached and little accountability. All the way on the other side is, I think what we saw with Biden. I don't know where Kamala comes down on this. Obviously, when you talk about Democrats, we're talking about, they have deep ties to labor. That includes the NEA and the AFT, right? The National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers. We're looking at, I don't know what we're looking at, maybe more of the same. Like maybe not such a great scenario for the future of like the charter school legislation and charter school funding, right? And so it feels like when it comes to education, you could easily say like it's kind of a wash. Do you want to gamble and go all in for school choice and then just like check off these other boxes of things that you don't care about? Or do you care more about the big picture? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I mean, we're looking at the education stuff. I would say this has a dotted line to it. I think the Republicans have some things in place. So they had the Teamsters president speak at the RNC, Sean O'Brien. I don't know if you saw that speech. But the fact that somebody from Teamsters, somebody that is a clear power player in labor, spoke on the main stage at the RNC. I mean, they're campaigning, and and listen, man, that side is not concerned with Trump lying. They're not concerned with him misspeaking. They're not concerned with his record. Like I think strategically, our side or my side or whomever, they keep focusing on things that other side doesn't care about. Well, what about his allegations? What about his record? What about this? What about those lies? And again, they don't care because they are focused on, if he gets in, the policies we want, the judges we want, which he did a good job of the first go round. Like, that damn Roe v. Wade has some holes in it now because of Trump, and if he gets back in, he can put the final death nail in that stuff. Like, they're focused on that win. And I think we have to, it's just a bad strategy for us to try to put our values on the opposition who is not beholden to those values. I think that's a recipe for losing. I think our side would much rather feel right than actually win at times. And I think that's just,
Yeah. I mean, I think what we are seeing with, and it's not isolated to the Republican Party, but this modern Republican Party is not the same Republican Party that existed when Ronald Reagan, the assassination attempt happened, right? It's a very different party. It's different from the Bush days, right? This party
is not Mitt Romney's party, buddy.
it's not even. It's only Republican Party in name, and what we're seeing, I think, with the even the selection of somebody like J.D. Vance for VP. I don't know if you caught the Pete Buttigieg interview on Bill Maher recently, but he kind of laid it out very quickly. It's like do not try to apply some kind of logical filter based on what you think somebody is going to do based on values. It's about power. That's really what it's about. And so it's about power for the unions. It's about power for individuals. I think Mike Pence was like the great example. And this is also something interesting where you have to try and explain to young people, how did Mike Pence go from an evangelical who basically thought that Trump was Satan to accepting the nomination to, on the final day of his vice presidency, people were ready to like hang him.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
How do you explain? So that, I mean, but that's where we
yeah,
are.
What is JD Vance on record calling Trump as though, right? Like, I mean, he called him
Oh yeah, he called him, especially with his ties to
he called him
Applebee's,
he compared him to Hitler.
he called him an opioid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
but it's power,
hey,
man. It
yeah.
is it's power. And I mean, look, JD
Yeah.
Vance is younger than me. JD Vance is what, 38, 39? I'm 40.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, JD Vance is, listen, this is what I think that party is doing. I think the Republicans are not very comfortable with Trump, the leadership. I think that, you know, especially with Trump's coming out hard against Project 2025, I don't think that it's for Trump. I think it's for people that will be working with Trump, like JD Vance. I think that Trump is also old, and I think Republicans would be okay if Trump won and fell ill during his his presidency, and it became President JD Vance, who is Project 2025, who is like young and who is like the new kind of hybrid of this like very radical Republican Party versus, like, you know, he got the fame with his book and his movie. I mean, I heard a lot about JD Vance just being, you know, just living in Kentucky before. Like, I remember Hillbilly Elegy coming out and then it kind of being a big thing. And, you know, he has a brown wife. You know, there's a lot of whoever is behind the scenes in that Republican team. They're thinking beyond Trump. They're thinking beyond this moment. And I think it would behoove us to be doing the same. I think if we were doing the same, Kamala Harris wouldn't have to come in under the duress. If we were doing the same, it wouldn't leak that Jill Biden's staff and Kamala Harris's staff are not seeing eye to eye because Jill Biden wanted to keep that power, wanted to, you know, keep pushing that. So we got there's a race, you know. If I wasn't living it, I might take some delight in the drama of like the actual battle of the debate, you know, of the race, of the political theater. But I do think there's a lot of, I don't think it's the most important election in history. But I do think it's very important.
So what is this Project 2025?
Yeah, Project 2025 is this huge 900-page document, but basically it is the ethos and path forward that came out of Heritage Foundation of how they want Republicans to think and be working towards, right? It's their galvanizing document. So there's a plan for education, right? And in it, it's getting rid of, like, an example is getting rid of the Department of Education, which has been pushed for a long time. It's not just that the department would go away, it's that the duties that lived under the Department of Education would be moved into another department, right? It would be consolidated, almost sold for parts, right? So, you know, maybe it's the Department of Treasury or whatever, you know, whatever, right? There are things around that. There are things around jobs. They'll take out certain things where jobs are currently reporting on the race of, you know, hey, here's how many people of color we hired. They're going to take stuff like that away. They don't want race to play any type of role. They're trying to lead towards this colorblind, their terminology, not mine, this colorblind society that they say is based on merit. I don't think that I buy that. There is a lot of economic things in there. So a lot of things around taxes or like, you know, hey, we need smaller government, hence getting rid of this department, getting rid of that department. You know, there's going to be breaks for business and commerce, tax breaks. I mean, it's their manifesto. And they made it long and big and they made it bulky because they know it's going to be hard for people to necessarily read and tackle. But if you're JD Vance, if you are a young Republican coming up, or if you are somebody with some power in that party, you understand what your role is in it. That's my belief.
It's a playbook. It's a playbook. Yep.
It's a playbook. And remember when we were doing our work in the school stuff, and then the union's playbook leaked that started in Chicago, and then they used the same playbook in Oakland. Like, it's a playbook. Yeah. It's a much thicker.
Yeah, it's like
it is a playbook.
Like, are you going off of the George Soros playbook, or you going off the Charles and David Koch or the DeVos playbook? Because
right. Isn't it crazy that these are Charles and David? He was not talking about us. He's talking about
yeah.
He's talking about
those are
a lot more money than us.
Those are those are two of the biggest funders to the Heritage Foundation there.
Absolutely.
you know.
They're also a really big fan of the HBCUs, but
Yep,
they spread their money pretty wide. But yeah, man.
Yeah. All right. So can we watch a little clip before we finish?
Absolutely, man. You got it.
All right. We're going to humanize Kamala Harris here as good as we can.
We're gonna do our role.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
There's an old-fashioned record player at the vice president's home in Northwest DC because the vice president, Kamala Harris, picked up some vinyl yesterday. The vice president went shopping at HR Records. It's a Black-owned business on Kennedy Street in Northwest DC. Harris greeted the store staff, other customers inside, and then showed off her purchases on the sidewalk in front of the store.
Charlie Mingus, really one of the greatest jazz performers ever. One of my favorite albums of all time. Roy Ayers, Everybody Loves Sunshine. You know this one? So good. It's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
And then Porgy and Bess.
Miles Davis.
All right.
Yeah.
She's got some good selections there, kind of running the gamut in terms of genres.
See?
Kamala Harris, I've given you my money. I will be supporting you. I'll be voting for you.
What you got to say?
Nothing. No, nothing at all. It is the equivalent of somebody that y'all might have critiqued inside your own race, and then the politics come and the election comes, and all of a sudden they're eating burritos on like camera. Like it's just like eating.
Yeah. So this is interesting because she and it's like a whole other show breaking down her actual like ethnic and racial background too, right? Because she presents as to most people as African American, right? There's a narrative there, but then I'm seeing all this stuff from like South Asian,
and her father is Jamaican born.
Exactly.
Like, so
exactly. So
yes, she's Black American, but not anyway. It's weird, but.
Well, I think it's also worth, it's
worth the discussion.
It's worth a discussion because I totally hear what you're saying. Yeah,
I put it like this. She could be right.
Anybody else buying vinyl? Any presidential candidate that is going to buy vinyl? Maybe it's the Doobie Brothers.
Right.
Maybe it's Metallica.
Nirvana. Maybe it's Nirvana. Right. Like
there you go. The Wu-Tang Clan.
Maybe, and listen, and that's why I didn't add anything. Listen, I think Kamala Harris should win. I hope she wins. I'm rooting for her to win. That doesn't mean that I'm not a human and I don't know when somebody's pandering to me and it's like not an act. But again, if that's going to work for you, then pander away. I don't think it's going to work. I think that if you have a direct talk, and I think that when you're talking to Southeast Asian people and the whole demeanor changes, I don't know, man. I want her to win. I've given my money. I would critique much freer if it was a different time and maybe she wasn't. We are where we are. We are where we are because whatever critique I have, which I do have, it is nowhere near the critique that I have on a Donald Trump presidency, especially with the things that I know that's at stake. But I think we've done a terrible job as a party of laying that out. I think if you cannot, Democrats, listen to me. The best way to get Democratic voters is not to always accuse them of being sexist and or racist if they don't like this candidate. It is to say this candidate is working for you like this, or this other candidate is going to work against you like this. But I don't think like I can have a critique. I'm not sexist or racist. I love my people a lot.
Yeah.
But it's so painfully obvious that it's like, but I love Roy Ayers too. So God bless. Everybody loves Sunshine. One of the most iconic jingles, one of the most iconic melodies of all time. So, you're the DJ, brother. I'll let you take us out. I know you can
have my minute. Let me have my minute. Yeah. All right. We're at time. Great show. It's actually helped me to kind of get my thinking straight around all the stuff that's happened. And so I hope it was a benefit to our audience. What's up, Bill? BS3 is in the house and other people that are here listening. We've taken a couple of weeks off, but we are back now on track. So you will see us here every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. East Coast time for the South Star Classroom. And then regarding the topic of today, I think just people need to stay informed. Be mindful of where you're getting your news from. Don't get it from social media. So,
I use an app called Ground News, David. I don't know if you've heard it, Ground News.
No.
I pay for it, but I think there's either a free or cheap version. But basically, it's all the news, but it tells you like if it's slanted left or slanted right, and then they'll have
I love that.
Your blind spot. So I'll send you a code so that you can take a look, at least try it out. But that's what I've been using, and I know where it came from. Who paid for it, if anybody, stuff like that. So. Pretty good.
That's great. Yeah. And so, just pay, we're going to have to pay attention through the convention and then ultimately up to the November election. And again, I think you said it well, Charles. You have to figure out like, what is it that you're willing to let go about a particular candidate?
Right.
Because I think at this point, regardless of who you're going for, it's about winning. I mean, that's really the only reason to get involved in electoral politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one thing. It's about winning. And so for the Democrats, around how they kind of help craft the narrative around presidential candidate Harris, the vice presidential candidate that they select, I hope they are able to put together a good ticket and really with one thought in mind, and that's to win.
Right. Yeah. I sent you that, man. For David, Jube, and Omar, I am Charles. We will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I mean that when I say it right now. So y'all be smooth. Peace.